Okay, so we had chapter 5, pages 142 to 146. So, the first section is transition and post-secondary educational opportunities, curriculum and outcomes. So part of the curriculum is the IEP of deaf youth are required by law to have a transition plan that will assist them in their life and schooling after high school. They are eligible for these services up until their 22nd birthday. Some of the outcomes after high school, there was a comprehensive review of studies show that deaf youth face many barriers in finding transition services, including generic and superficial quality of appropriate transition training during high school, struggle to find more time during transition training, inability to complete household chores and live independently with or without a roommate. So academic and technical degrees are provided by four-year colleges who enroll deaf, multicultural, and multilingual students, as well as those with disabilities. So there's a list of colleges that, if they have deaf students who are multicultural, have disabilities, multilingual, they can then provide degrees for them. So those colleges include Gallaudet University, Washington, D.C., California State University, and Big Springs, Texas. So, part 2 of transition and post-secondary educational opportunities, curriculum and outcomes. So this is a bunch of statistics that they talked about in the book. So, deaf students are increasingly attending community colleges and utilizing sign language interpreters. So in a study with 18 to 64-year-olds, it was reported that deaf 18 to 64-year-olds, it was reported that community colleges enroll 70.3% of deaf students in a 2-year associate degree program, but only 61% of hearing students are enrolled in community colleges for 2-year associate's degrees. The most popular fields of study found were business and health, with only 26.1% of deaf students studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It talks about how it takes deaf people 5 years to enroll in college compared to hearing people where it only takes 2 years. As we all probably remember, you really didn't start looking at colleges till junior year of high school, but for deaf people it takes more time for them to figure that out. More deaf men are enrolled in college, 53.3%, compared to deaf women. There's only 46.5%. But deaf women have a higher completing rate than deaf men. Different ethnicities also affect graduation rates. So, deaf Latinx have lower than average attainment, and deaf Asian students were more likely to complete their bachelor's degree. From a sample of deaf students, 30.8% have learning disabilities, 8.1% were deaf-blind, and 13.1% have a motor disability. For some deaf-disabled students, they have an opportunity to go to a state center for deaf ages 18 to 22 to learn independent living schools. So, some people might know this as a group home. Someone with autism or Down syndrome might also go there because they need help learning how to live without their parents and to live by themselves. Alright, so next we have transition and post-secondary educational opportunities. And in this section they talk about post-secondary challenges. So first of all, some options for deaf students after finishing high school include post-secondary school activities, post-secondary education, vocational education, employment, adult services. That would be like the group home. So they talked about how deaf youth with disabilities face barriers in accessing work training, as well as finding and retaining employment after high school due to their disability. If they are eligible for college, disabled students may need support services such as pro-tactile interpreting, more time for testing, note-taking, writing centers, tutoring to a greater extent than deaf students without disabilities. And those students will really struggle if they can't get those services. And then they talk about how deaf multilingual students who attend college may also need extra support to meet language needs for both spoken and sign language. So they might know a spoken language and a sign language, but they might be behind in one or the other, or both. So like for English, so people who are bilingual, they only know 2. Multilingual, they know many different languages, which can affect how they might know a little bit of each, but may not be fluent. So that's where they might need support to meet the language needs.
Preparation of teachers and educational interpreters. There are 3 types of communication approaches taught in the teacher training in deaf education. The first one is bilingual. It emphasizes both ASL and English. They have coursework in deaf culture, multiculturalism, ASL, and English bilingual theories, practices, and assessments. The second one is comprehensive, which means bilingual and blending approaches. It provides training for teachers primarily in simultaneous communication, teach learning, pedagogy, and communication practices for a wide variety of deaf students enrolled in both center schools and public schools. The third one is oral, primarily found at private universities and related to the speech-language pathology and audiology clinic. This model helps deaf students get ready to be in the mainstream. Also, there is the Council of Exceptional Children and Council on Education of the Deaf jointly published a set of standards for teachers who work with deaf students. Some teacher training programs offer certifications for teachers to work with deaf students with some disabilities. Others require teacher to have dual certification in deaf and special education. Some teachers must take a certification exam, which can cause barriers for deaf people because English is their second language. And then ironically, this state testing does not include a test on ASL. The test does not ensure that a child is learning. It is the quality of communication between the teacher and the student. Educational interpreter training. The interpreter may have to inform the teacher about deaf culture and multicultural issues, like if an interpreter is for a deaf student talking to a hearing teacher. They must have good proficiencies in sign language and translation techniques. They must have knowledge about deaf culture and multiculturalism and coursework in the academic areas they are interpreting. Deaf-blind interpreters must have even more skills and techniques in working with this population. Some challenges for teachers and interpreters. The faculty needs to develop a multicultural competencies, as well as examine their own prejudices, stereotypes, and attitudes about cultures other than their own, including attitudes of white privilege. They need to examine attitudes for low expectations where deaf students of color and those with disabilities are tracked with less frequency in academics and tracked more often vocational and special education classes compared to their own white counterparts.